Let me ask you something personal. Is there one person in your life, a friend, a sister, maybe your own spouse, who you believe knows you completely? Someone you trust with everything? Hold that person in your mind right now, because by the time this video ends, you may realize that the most dangerous person in your life is not your enemy. It is the person you trusted too much. My name is Eleanor. I am 74 years old, and I am not proud of everything I am about to tell you. I had a dream stolen from me, not by a stranger, but by the people sitting at my own dinner table. I had my retirement quietly drained, not by a thief, but by people who called me family. I had my deepest secret spread across my entire community by the one woman I thought would never breathe a word. And I watched my closest friendship of 30 years end in a single phone call that lasted less than 2 minutes. None of this happened because I was careless. None of this happened because I was naive. It happened because I talked, because I believed that sharing meant connecting, that honesty meant safety, that the people who loved me would protect what I gave them. I was wrong. Every single time I was wrong. So today I want to give you something it took me 5 decades to learn. 5 things you must never say out loud. Not to family, not to friends, not to anyone. Because once certain words leave your mouth, you cannot chase them back down. And the damage they leave behind, that stays forever. Before I continue, if you are someone who has ever been burned by trusting the wrong person, hit that subscribe button right now, because everything I share on this channel comes from real life, real mistakes, real consequences, no fluff, no performance, just hard truth from someone who lived it. Now, let us begin. Secret number 1. Your plans and your dreams. Here is something most people never learn until it is too late. When you share a goal before you have achieved it, your brain releases the same dopamine it would release if you had actually done it. Scientists studied this and found something that should concern every ambitious person alive. Talking about your plans gives your brain the feeling of completion without any of the actual work, and that feeling kills your urgency before you even begin. But that is just the beginning of the damage. I learned this at 34 years old. I had been saving for 3 years straight, working double shifts, skipping every vacation, eating lunch at my desk every single day. I had a number in my bank account that finally made something possible that I had wanted since I was a teenager, a flower shop, not a chain, not a franchise, just a small corner storefront with big windows and fresh flowers every morning, the kind of place where people slowed down on their way to work just to look inside. I had found the location, spoken to the landlord, had the lease papers in my hand. I was 2 weeks away from signing. And then I did what felt natural. I was excited. I was proud. I had worked for this. So I told people. I told my father at Sunday dinner. He put his fork down and said, "A flower shop? Eleanor, do you know what the failure rate is for small retail businesses in the first 2 years? It is over 60%. I just do not want to see you lose everything." I told my best friend over coffee. She tilted her head and said, "You running a business by yourself? Honey, you get overwhelmed planning a dinner party," I told my older sister. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand and said, "I just think you should be realistic. You have a stable job. Not everyone gets that." Not one of them yelled at me. Not one of them was cruel. They all thought they were helping. But here is what they were actually doing. They were projecting. Every single one of them. My father had tried to start a business in his 40s and failed. My friend had a dream she never chased and buried it under cynicism. My sister had spent 20 years playing it safe and needed me to do the same, so her choice felt less like a loss. They were not seeing my dream. They were seeing their own fear and handing it to me. And I took it. Seed by seed, conversation by conversation, I took their fear and made it mine. I did not sign the lease. I told myself I would wait, when the timing was better, when I had saved more, when I felt more certain. That day never came. 40 years later, that corner storefront became someone else's flower shop. I drove past it last April. Buckets of tulips on the sidewalk, a hand-painted sign in the window, a line of people waiting outside on a Tuesday morning. I pulled over and sat in my car and looked at it for a long time. So here is what you must understand. The people who love you are not always the people who should know your plans. Love does not protect a dream. Silence does. Work without announcing. Build without explaining. And when it is finished, when it is standing and real and no one can take it from you, that is when you let people see it, not a moment before, because by then it is too late for anyone to stop you. Secret number 2, your financial situation. Never, and I mean never, let people know what you have. I watched this happen to a man named Frank. Frank is 73 years old, retired school teacher from Ohio, 41 years in the classroom. He never earned a large salary. But Frank was methodical. He lived below his means every single year of his working life. He invested quietly and consistently. He drove the same car for 11 years. He took his lunch to work in the same brown bag for 3 decades. By the time he retired, Frank had built something genuinely solid. Not wealthy, just free. Enough to live without financial anxiety for the first time in his adult life. And at a family Thanksgiving dinner, when his son-in-law asked how retirement was treating him, Frank smiled and said, "Honestly, I am set. I worked hard and it paid off. No complaints. 8 words. That is all it took." Within 60 days, his phone had not stopped. His nephew, 23 years old, student loans crushing him. Uncle Frank, just 20,000. I swear I will pay you back. His younger brother, a business opportunity, 30,000. You will get it back double. A college friend he had not spoken to in 7 years. Medical bills, 15,000. I had nowhere else to turn. Then a cousin, then a neighbor, then people whose names he had to look up in an old address book. Frank told me something I have never forgotten. He said, "Eleanor, I noticed something after a while. Every single person who called me, they did not ask how I was doing first, not one of them. They said hello, and then they got to the reason they called. I was not a person they were checking on. I was a problem they were trying to solve." 2 years after that Thanksgiving dinner, Frank's retirement fund was reduced by more than half. And here is the part that breaks my heart every time I think about it. Of all the people he helped, not one of them paid him back in full. Several of them never called again once they had what they needed. One of them, his own nephew, blocked his number. Frank told me, "I thought I was being a good person. I thought generosity was a virtue, but what I actually did was advertise myself as a resource. And resources get consumed. That is their entire purpose." So here is the rule. When anyone asks how you're doing financially, you say the same thing every single time, getting by. You know how it is, vague, consistent, unremarkable. Not because you are being dishonest, but because your security belongs to you. And the moment it belongs to everyone, it starts disappearing. Secret number 3, your pain, and your health struggles. This one requires me to be very direct with you, and I need you to hear it without taking it as cruelty, because it is the opposite of cruelty. I have a friend named Carol. She is 72, one of the sharpest and funniest women I have ever known. She has arthritis that some mornings makes it impossible to button her own shirt. She has chronic back pain that wakes her before dawn. She has fatigue that turns ordinary tasks into endurance events. And for a long time, Carol answered every "How are you?" with the full truth. The knees, the back, the new medication that was not working, the specialist who said there was nothing more to try. She was not complaining for sympathy. She genuinely believed that honesty was the foundation of real friendship. But over 2 years, something shifted. The invitations became less frequent, the phone calls shorter. When she walked into a room, people smiled and immediately changed the subject before she could answer the question they had just asked. She called me one evening and said, "I feel like I am disappearing. I am not doing anything differently. I am just being honest." I sat with that for a moment before I answered her. Then I said, "Carol, everyone in our circle is carrying something. Margaret has her hip. Diane lost her husband 8 months ago and still cannot sleep. Susan's son has not spoken to her in 2 years, and she carries that every single day. When you lead with your pain, you are not connecting with theirs. You are adding to it, and people can only carry so much." There was a long silence on the phone. Then she said, "I never thought about it that way. Most people never do. So here is the rule. Your doctor needs to know your pain. One deeply trusted person in your life needs to know your pain. But the wider world, the dinners, the gatherings, the casual conversations, give them the version of you that makes them feel lighter for having been around you. Not because you are performing, but because you are choosing who you want to be in this world. And people remember how you made them feel every single time. Secret number 4, your past, not your regrets in general. I mean the specific things, the ones you have never said out loud, the ones you go back to in your quietest moments and think, what if someone finds out? I want to tell you about a woman I will call Grace. She is 68 years old, and she made a mistake in her late 30s that she carried privately for nearly 30 years. Her marriage at the time was in a very dark place. Disconnection that had lasted years, a loneliness that had become its own kind of chronic pain. And she made a choice she regretted before it was even over. She stayed in her marriage. She quietly repaired it over years. She became genuinely a better and more careful person. And she carried that old mistake the way some people carry an old injury, present, managed, mostly invisible to everyone around her. Until one afternoon she sat with a woman from her church group. 7 years of friendship, real friendship, the kind where you finish each other's sentences and remember details about each other's lives that even family forgets. And Grace thought, if I could just say it out loud to one safe person, maybe some of this weight would finally lift. So she told her everything, and for 4 days she told me it felt like she could breathe again. Then on the 5th day, a woman at her Wednesday church group looked at her differently, just slightly, just enough. By the end of the 2nd week, Grace's name was traveling through conversations she was not in. Within a month, something she had guarded for 3 decades was being discussed by people who had known her for years and thought they knew her completely. One woman stopped her in the parking lot and said, "Grace, I just want you to know. I heard what happened." and I think what you did was unforgivable. I do not care how long ago it was. Grace got in her car, drove home, and never went back. She told me, I thought confession would set me free. What it actually did was hand a loaded weapon to someone who had no idea how to handle it. And they did not handle it. They used it. Here is the truth. You do not owe anyone your worst chapter, not your children, not your closest friend, not the person who seems safest of all. Learn from it. Carry it with grace. Forgive yourself as completely as you can. But keep it. It belongs to you. Some things are not secrets because you are ashamed. Some things are secrets because they are yours, and sharing them does not heal you. It just redistributes the damage. Secret number 5. And I have saved this one for last because I believe it does the most quiet damage of all. Other people's secrets. I need to tell you about Douglas. Douglas is 76 years old, and he lost the closest friendship of his adult life, 34 years, because of one sentence he spoke on a Tuesday evening when his wife asked why he seemed distracted. His friend, a man I will call Ray, had confided in Douglas years earlier, something deeply private. Something that had cost Ray enormously to say out loud. He had chosen Douglas specifically because Douglas was the person in his life he trusted most completely. Douglas kept that secret faithfully for years, but one evening his wife looked at him across the dinner table and said, "You seem somewhere else tonight. What is going on?" And Douglas, exhausted and meaning absolutely no harm, told her. Just enough to explain why he was distracted, just her, just this once. His wife told her sister at lunch 3 days later. Her sister mentioned it to a mutual friend that weekend. That friend ran into Ray at a hardware store 6 weeks later and said something that should have been impossible for anyone outside of one private conversation to know. Ray called Douglas that same afternoon. Douglas told me he remembers exactly where he was standing, at the kitchen counter, peeling an orange. Ray's voice was completely flat. He said, "I told you one thing I have never told another person in my life, and I just heard it repeated back to me by someone I barely know. How? Not a question, just how." Douglas tried to explain, tried to apologize, said he never imagined it would travel, said he trusted his wife completely. Ray said, "I trusted you completely." He hung up. They have not spoken since. Douglas told me, "People think betrayal looks like someone choosing to hurt you, but most betrayal is just carelessness dressed up as trust." I was careless with the most careful thing Ray ever gave me, and I cannot give it back. So here is the rule, and there is no version of this rule with exceptions. If someone tells you something in confidence, it ends with you, not your spouse, not your best friend, not the one person you are absolutely certain will never tell anyone. It ends with you, because secrets do not travel because people are malicious. They travel because people trust the people they love, and those people trust the people they love. And within 3 steps, something sacred has become gossip. You are the only place where that chain can be broken. Be the place where it stops. Let me leave you with something. I am 74 years old, and I have lived long enough to watch words destroy things that took decades to build. I told people my plans, and they talked me out of my own dream. I let people know about my finances, and I watched relationships quietly become transactions. I shared my pain too freely, and I became someone people avoided without even realizing it. I revealed old mistakes, and I handed people a version of me they would never let go of. And I once shared something that was not mine to share, and I paid a price for it that I am still paying. These are not lessons from a book. These are scars, and I am telling you about them so that yours do not have to look the same. Guard your plans until they are real. Guard your finances like your future depends on it, because it does. Carry your pain with dignity, keep your past where it belongs, and protect other people's trust like it is the most precious thing they have ever given you, because it is. I am 74 years old, and I am still here, still learning, still getting some things wrong, but I know this now in a way I did not know it at 30 or 40 or even 60. Your silence is not a wall, it is a foundation, and everything worth building gets built on solid ground. If something in this video stayed with you, share it with someone who needs it. And tell me in the comments, which of these 5 hit you the hardest? I read every comment, every single one. I will see you in the next one. Take care of yourself, and remember, the right words at the wrong moment can cost you everything. Choose silence. Choose wisely. Choose yourself.